Senior Principal Scientist at Takeda Pharma, and he owns a PhD in the topic patient-centric drug product design, which I believe is rather rare, and that's one reason why we have you here. And it's a pleasure to listen to you now talking about patient-centric inhalation therapy. Are we getting here? So let's put the patient in the focus.
Exactly, yeah. Can you hear me well? Oh, yes. Okay, good. So good morning, everyone. I hope you had a good coffee break. So like Felix mentioned, topic of my presentation today will be about patient-centric drug product design. And the question here, are we getting there? In my perspective, we are still a bit far from it. And I'm sure a lot of presentations will show that patients still struggle to use the inhalation devices. And I want to focus a bit on that and how to use patient-centric drug product design to develop drug products that can better meet the needs of the patients. So what is patient centricity? What is patient-centric drug product design? Patient-centric drug product design is the process of identifying the comprehensive needs of the target patient population and using that knowledge to design adequate drug products that can therefore increase acceptability and compliance. This in a way will lead to higher efficacy of prescribed treatments, therefore reducing healthcare costs because there will be less hospitalizations and healthcare follow-ups. It is important that the patient is involved in the drug product development since early stages. And how can we perceive the patient-centric model? So as you can see in the image, the patient is at the center during healthcare provision from start to finish. And he's in direct contact with the different healthcare providers which are involved in his or her healthcare provision. Therefore, the patient can have an active voice because it's in direct contact with the different stakeholders, and as such, they can together work on finding the best healthcare provision for the specific needs of the patient. I really like to always mention this sentence. You can't deliver tomorrow's innovation if you're still using yesterday's business models. This is the case for the pharmaceutical industry. The business model has been stagnated for many years. We still have the same model. And this, in a way, limits a bit the implementation of the patient-centric model. In the first way, we have pharma pipeline. So the pharmaceutical companies are very focused on the profit, on the return on the investment. This return must be done as soon as possible because there's a lot of investment done from early development until commercialization in order to bring a new product to the market. And we all know that many molecules die in the clinical stages, so there's a lot of money which is involved and then it is not returned. So in this sense, we need to ensure that we put more focus on the patient rather than the profit, because if we involve the patient earlier into the development process, then we are ensuring that we are using their feedback to develop a drug product that in the end will meet the needs of the patient, therefore higher acceptability and more likelihood for that product to reach commercialization. The second one is the input of patients during clinical trials. So we should not think patients as subjects that we use in order to get the data that the pharmaceutical companies need to bring the product to the markets, safety, efficacy, etc. But we should consider the patient as a partner because patient is really keen or important to have, of course, a therapy which will benefit. And we can use the patient feedback and experience within that development to ensure that we can design in the end a drug product that really the patient can use, the patient can benefit from it, and can have the best therapeutic outcome. Also, as we are really in the era of digital technology and the pharmaceutical companies are really investing on it right now, I'm also expecting and hopefully that patient-centric model and clinical trials will be expedited with this trend. So just to give a bit overview about the patient-centric regulatory evolution, back in 2009, we had a revision of the ICH-Q8 guideline, which stated that the product should be designed to meet patient needs. In this sense, this led to the pharmaceutical companies to start focusing more on the patient also, not only on the on the typical safety and efficacy profiles of the drug products under development. And in this sense, patient is an important key role to that development. Then 2013, we had the EMA guideline for the development of pediatric medicines, because we are all aware that everyone thinks that liquid formulations are the best dosage form for pediatric populations. However, these have several limitations, such as shelf life and stability. And within this regulatory provision, lots of different studies have been conducted on developing solid oral dosage forms also for pediatric populations. The typical assumption that children cannot swallow tablets or capsules. However, there were several clinical studies that showed that it is indeed possible with the development of mini tablets, for example, 2-millimeter mini tablets. And there are several clinical studies on the literature showing that even neonates are able to swallow those mini tablets. So there are many clinical trials now running on the development of pediatric medicines considering solid oral dosage forms. Then in 2020, we had a similar framework, however, targeting the older patient population, because older patients, they are very heterogeneous in comparison to adults. So they have a lot of comorbidities, they have dexterity problems, they have swallowability problems. So they are special patient population also that we need to consider their needs whenever developing products for them. And going forward, maybe we'll also have guidelines for the development of patient-centric inhaler devices. The consumer industry is a good example of how to implement a patient-centric approach because they involve the consumer very early into their development process of products, and they do a lot of market research. Within the pharmaceutical industry are the clinical trials in a sense, and they focus on 3 main topics. What is the appropriateness of the product that they are developing for the consumer industry that they are targeting? How will the consumer industry use the product, and what is the perception of them with regards to that specific product? And with this knowledge, they can really develop products that then can be intuitively used by the consumer industry. And the mobile phone is a good example of it. If we see the evolution of the mobile phone back to 1973 to what we have nowadays, that's the perfect example. And if you think about it, even old people can use a smartphone nowadays because it's very easy to use, it's intuitive. So this is a good example of how to implement a patient-centric approach. I was very happy to see this guideline coming out this year. I think it was back in March, so it's still very fresh. The guideline title was Patient Involvement in the Development, Regulation, and Safe Use of Medicines. So in this sense, we are trying to implement a patient-centric approach into the pharmaceutical industry. And I don't want to go into much detail, so I just put out here some key topics that were mentioned in this guideline, and we can see that there's a real focus on the patient. So just to give some examples, in the introduction, we have opportunities to incorporate patients' perspective during drug product development, increasing their engagement, patient centricity and medicine development. Also, patient voice is vital, so patient feedback is very important to develop appropriate drug products. And also some recommendations on how to engage healthcare providers to make this happen, and many other topics. Now, switching into pulmonary drug delivery. So we can see it as a triangle, combining 3 main topics: patient, device, and formulation. And they all need to be synchronized and well linked together in order to have a drug product that really works. There's a lot of work done on formulation, of course, and the material science and the particle engineering to ensure that we have a respirable fraction of particles. However, if we then have a device that doesn't really meet the needs of the formulation, it will not work. And on the other hand, if the patient doesn't know how to use the device, we will not have a good outcome of it. So in my presentation, I'll mostly focus on the interaction between the patient and device, and how can we then implement a patient-centric approach towards it. So when we talk about drug delivery to the lungs, of course, patients use inhaler devices, and there's a multitude of different inhaler devices in the market, different types, different mechanisms, and for the patient, this is probably a burden because they need to understand how to manipulate the device, how to make it work, how to administer it. So it's very challenging for the patient, and this is something that must be considered also during development, not only to ensure that we have a product that works, but also to ensure that the patient knows how to use it. So in my perspective, if we don't consider the patient perspective during development, inhalation devices will definitely fail. And I'll show you some literature that shows that there's still a lot of administration errors. So in a real-world setting, patients still struggle to administer with inhalation devices, and there are a lot of administration errors. So here we have a study which the patients switch device from one device to the other, and we can see there's a higher likelihood for the patient when switching device to have poor administration compliance, independent on the outcome of it. If it's either unsuccessful, partial, or successful, we can see that when switching device, the efficacy of the treatment is poorer. And in another study, they have compared administration errors between DPIs and MDIs, and this outcome is somehow expectable because there was a higher rate of administration errors for MDIs because the administration mechanism is a dual mechanism, so the patient needs to activate the device and inhale, while for the DPIs, the mechanism is activated by the suction mechanism conducted by the patient. So here we can see that there's still a lot of progress that we need to do to ensure that patients really know how to administer devices, inhalation devices, and we really need to consider their design in order to make it more user-friendly and for the patient also to know how to use it intuitively, because whenever they change the device, they really struggle, and most likely the outcome will be worse. So this study was already presented by Marco. So this was a 40-year study. They evaluated the administration technique by the patients, and we can see independent. We have 3 different outcomes. The line is flat for all of them, which means that the administration technique from the patient will be always the same throughout the years. So to point out that training is really important. We should put more emphasis on the training patients to learn how to really administer and use inhalation devices. And this is actually something that is being done already. So nowadays, in order for an inhalation device to reach the market, the pharmaceutical companies really need to demonstrate that the patient knows how to use the device. So that is really a good progress. Just a small video here.
Well, sometimes doctors make mistakes. Anna, you have to try twice as hard to fix them. Are you using your inhaler?
All the time. Go through 1 a week.
You sure you're using it right?
Do I look like an idiot?
No. Why don't you show me how your inhaler works?
Jerk.
So basically what this video I'm trying to say is that in our perspective, because we are involved in the area, maybe for us, it's very easy to understand how an inhalation device works. But from the patient perspective, that's really not the case. So again, training is very important, and education, so that we can really ensure that patients really can take the most of the benefit out of the drug therapies via pulmonary route. So this is a patient-centric device design proposal that was done by Trudell Medical. I think I presented this or I touched it during the pre-teaser event that was done back in June. So I really like it, and I think it's a good model that could be used for the future. So mainly we have 4 phases. And for each phase, we have 3 different components. We have first one is the patient involvement. The second one is the technical part for the aerosol development or the device development, and then the testing and the obtainment of results. So we start with the initial problem statement which they do online service to understand patient perspective. Then they conducted small technical feasibility, and they gained some insights on how to design the inhalation device. And then moving to phase 2, we start with initial concepts. We do some aerosol testing in which we also involve the patients to understand the handling and what is their feedback. And then we come with a lead prototype selected. Then for phase 3, we move into industrial design, which can also involve scale up. We keep obtaining patient feedback and ranking of preferences. We keep doing aerosol testing and device handling testing. And then hopefully we have a lead device selected. And then this is a continuous effort going forward. Phase 4, design engineering. Even though the product can be on the market already, we should keep receiving patient feedback in order to optimize it and keep ensuring that we have the best prototype out there for the patient to use in the best way possible. So I want to give an example of a patient-centric design optimization that was done by Boehringer, and Felix will give a presentation about the same product, but about sustainability. I want to focus here on the patient-centric part. So the Respimat inhalation device has been on the market already for many years, and they had a first prototype that was on the market between 2002 to 2019, and this was the first inhaler to be recognized as easy to use by the Arthritis Foundation. Of course, when we talk about inhalers, we need to ensure that patient has grip and is really able to manual handle the devices. But still, the company thought about it, and even though they knew that the device was easy to inhale and easy to use, in terms of usability, if there was something else that could be done. So they did a design based on user feedback, hearing patient perspective, hearing patient feedback, understanding that feedback, and using that knowledge to improve the device. And they created a new platform since 2019. They did some improvements into the device in order to increase handling or improve handling. They did some changes also into the device that I will mention in the next slide. So this was the first prototype that was on the market, and this is the current one. So the current one can be also reusable. They did some changes on the designs, but most importantly, from a patient perspective, the handling of the device itself is easier. There's some automation that makes the change of the cartridge easier because this is now a reusable device. They also increased the size of the dose indicator because patients might have visual acuity problems, and they also increased the the grip of the cartridge because older patients, they have the dexterity problem. So these are some a good example of a patient-centric approach in order to do optimizations into the device to ensure that patients can really use it. They of course did some usability testings to ensure that the optimized device had better results as compared to the one that was on the market. So they did a first test where they evaluated the general handling and the ease of use, and then they did a comparative test between the inhaler that was on the market versus the optimized inhaler, and gained information about the patient experience with it. And then they did a confirmatory test to confirm the results and to ensure that the new device was really more appropriate as compared to the previous one. So in terms of results, it was confirmed that the new Respimat reusable and optimized, the usability of the device was improved by the patients. Patients were satisfied with the optimizations that were done. And also the device can be reused, which in terms of environmental concerns is also a good point, and in a way also brings motivation to the patient, because patient is also, while doing the therapy, is also helping the environment. So patient can be more committed to it. So these were all the different components that were seen as improved for the current device. So there's an easier insertion process for the cartridge. Like I mentioned before, readability of the dose indicator is also better because the size was increased. The device is very intuitive to use, which is very important from a patient perspective. Replacement is very easy to conduct also, and there's a bigger size for it, so it also allows better grip for the patient to manual handle the inhalation device during administration and changes. So in terms of device performance, convenience of use, and ease of handling, this is a successful case for patients, and a good example to follow for the future on how to really, even though that we have a product on the market that works, there's always much more we can do, and we can use, of course, patient feedback throughout those years while the product is on the market to do improvements into the design. So in summary, patients are very important for drug product development because we can obtain a lot of information from their feedback and also use that knowledge to refine and reframe the problem statement. They help us to establish suitable product designs for the target population because we are considering their specific needs and using that knowledge to optimize the design of the drug products to ensure that acceptability is appropriate going forward. And we can also understand the value of repeated usability studies because this is a continuous effort. We can conduct a usability study, obtain patient feedback, redo it based on that feedback, continue adapting, and then in the end ensuring that we have really reached the desired drug product design. So going forward, in terms of inhalation products, inhalation devices, of course, formulation science will always be there. It's very important. But I'm hoping also to see a lot of patient centricity involved into it. And like I mentioned before, digital healthcare or even artificial intelligence will play more important roles for the future. And going forward, hopefully, there are already some products on the market, smart inhalers, digital inhaler devices that can be connected to your mobile phone, and you can track how your therapy performance is going. And then this can also be linked to the healthcare provider, easier communication, easier dose adjustment, whatever needs to be done. And this will also reduce the burden for the patient. Maybe he does not longer have to go to the hospital setting to get feedback from the doctor. So in this direction, I really think patient centricity is important, and the digital technology will really have an important role into it. And with this, I'm done. Just want to mention that these are my own opinions, not the opinions from the company that I'm representing, and I would like to thank you for your attention.